Do you want the missing link? Then stop treating reality like a wall and start treating it like a delayed mirror. What you call the world is the already developed photograph of an internal decision you repeated until it became a pattern. Most people look at the photo and try to push the paper with their fingers, as if the scenery would obey their external effort. And while pushing, they continue to hold the same expression within. Quantum manifestation explained isn't a magical promise. It's a modern name for an ancient truth. Visible reality is sensitive to the invisible state you sustain. It doesn't respond to your occasional desire, nor to your one-day enthusiasm. It responds to your constant command, to your assumed identity, to the intimate tone you use when you talk to yourself when no one is listening. Here's how you've been living. You wake up, open your eyes, and accept the first thought as if it were a decree. You accept the weight of your body, the number in your bank account, the message on your phone, someone's tone of voice, and you conclude, this is how things are. And then you converse with yourself from that verdict, like a tired judge who has already decided before the trial. That conversation is the invisible current that maintains the same scenery. You call it destiny. I call it a mental habit. You call it bad luck. I call it fidelity to an old state. The missing link isn't more information. The missing link is inner authority. It's stopping letting the world tell you who you are and starting to deliberately choose the state from which you live. When I use the word quantum, I'm not asking you to memorize terms or get lost in mysteries. I'm asking you to perceive that reality is more like a radio than a stone. A radio doesn't create music, it tunes in. If you turn the dial to a frequency and then complain that the music is repetitive, the problem isn't with the station, it's with your hand. You can yell at the device, you can blame the city, you can complain about the air, but if you don't change the tuning, the music won't change. And your dial is your sustained attention, what you feed within, what you accept as normal, what you call I. The first essential principle is this: stop bowing to appearances as if they were authority. Reality isn't out there deciding what you deserve, it's out there displaying what you have sustained within. When you understand this, you stop begging for signs and stop asking for permission. You stop measuring yourself by what hasn't moved yet, because you understand the mechanics of delay. The mirror doesn't smile before you smile. The thermometer doesn't rise because you complain about the cold. It rises when the source changes. And you are that source. And how do you change the source? By what you allow to repeat within you when no one is looking. Your internal dialogue is your laboratory. If throughout the day you repeat, "It won't work. It's not for me. It always takes too long. I never finish," you are energetically signing a contract with the same scenario. And then you try a nice phrase for a few minutes and call that practice. Technique without identity is empty theater. Most people want a phrase to say for 5 minutes and a lifetime to doubt. This is incoherence, and incoherence governs nothing. Do a test today, not out of curiosity, but as a discipline. Observe how many times you catch yourself narrating your own life as if you were describing a prison. I am like this. I've always been like this. In my family, it's like this. In my country, it's like this. The market is like this. No one helps me. I'm unlucky. This seems real because you repeated it. But repetition isn't truth. It's training. And everything that has been trained can be trained again. If you want a simple image, here it is. Your mind is a stamp. Every time you accept an assumption without questioning, you press the stamp onto reality. And then you get scared because you see the stamp on the paper. Stop being scared of the paper. Change the stamp. Here comes the part that separates the curious from the creators. When the world shows you a scene contrary to what you have chosen, you don't use it as a final sentence. You use it as a temporary report. A report doesn't command. A report informs. What commands is the chosen state. I'm not asking you to deny facts. I'm asking you to stop turning facts into identity. A bill is a fact, not an identity. A delay is a fact, not a condemnation. A silence is a fact, not a verdict. As long as you continue to mix fact with identity, you will continue to recreate the same world, because the world responds to what you are within, not to what you comment on the outside. Think of a thermostat and a thermometer. The thermometer only reports what is. The thermostat defines what will be. Most people live like thermometers. They feel, observe, comment, complain. The creator lives like a thermostat, chooses, sustains, adjusts, and waits for the environment to obey. When the old scene appears, don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Ask, "What state was I sustaining for this to appear?" This question returns authority to you and ends the habit of blaming. Now, before getting into the second principle, I will tell you with the same clarity with which one gives an instruction at a critical time. If you want this to become a daily practice, and not just momentary inspiration, use the material in the pinned comment link. It was made to guide you exactly where the mind usually fails: consistency, focus, and conscious repetition. Use it as training, as a simple guide, as a structure that holds you when the old state tries to return. This is not for admiration, it is for application, because the new state isn't born from a single impulse, it's born from sustained practice. The second essential principle is the missing link for almost everyone: emotional coherence. You can affirm whatever you want with beautiful words, but if your body continues to react as if it doesn't believe, you are emitting mixed signals. Reality responds to coherence, not to performance. Quantum here means sensitivity to the deepest command. What you truly feel is true when no one is watching. It's like giving two different addresses for the same delivery. One part of you says, "I want," and another part of you lives as if it's not safe, it's not possible, it's not for me. The delivery doesn't arrive because the command is confused. Think of a conductor before an orchestra. If he moves the baton with doubt, each musician comes in when they want. The result turns into noise. Emotional coherence is a firm baton. It's not forced happiness. It's not a glued-on smile, it's stability. It's the calmness of one who knows. You can be tired and still be coherent. You can be silent and still be firm. Coherence is alignment between what you assume and what you allow yourself to feel as natural. Emotion isn't an ornament, it's a signature. It tells the world, "This is real for me." And how is coherence built without theatrics, with repeated internal micro-decisions? When fear comes, you don't argue with it as if it were a wise counselor. You treat it like a persistent salesperson. "I'm not buying it." You don't need to hate it, you just need not to obey it. When anxiety comes asking for urgency, you don't rush to prove anything. You slow down and return to the feeling of inevitability. Inevitability is the antidote to haste, because haste is the child of doubt. One who is coherent doesn't chase, walks like someone who already belongs. Here's a simple and serious exercise. 3 times a day for 60 seconds, stop everything. Not to become a Zen character, but to adjust your axis. Ask, what state is in command now? And then choose. Don't choose with words, choose with feeling. How do you choose feeling? Through the body, through breath, through inner posture. Relax your face, relax your chest. Take your tongue off the roof of your mouth. Let your mind stop begging. You are teaching your entire system to recognize the atmosphere of your new state as home, as natural, as familiar. This is what changes reality, familiarity with the new. I have seen people lose opportunities not for lack of talent, but for keeping their heart at war with their own goal. They want to grow, but feel guilty for growing. They want to be seen, but feel ashamed of being seen. They want to prosper, but feel better when they suffer. Because they suffered their whole life and made suffering a seal of identity, this internal division becomes a contradictory command, and the world returns division in the form of delays, confusions, and repetition. Emotional coherence means, I choose, I sustain, and I don't negotiate with fleeting sensations as if they were eternal truth. Sensations change. The chosen state remains when you maintain it. The third essential principle is the symbolic reading of life. The world always speaks to you, but not in the literal language you learned. It speaks through patterns, repetitions, encounters, delays, invitations, resistances. Most people interpret this as luck or bad luck. I call it feedback. If you keep finding closed doors, ask, in what area do I continue to see myself as someone who asks to enter, instead of someone who belongs? If you keep having relationships that diminish you, ask, where do I still diminish myself in secret? And then call it the other person diminished me. The symbol isn't an enemy, It's a message, a story for you to feel. A man crosses a city every day and swears it is hostile. He only sees closed faces, honking, rushing. One day he leaves home after a night in which he firmly decided that he would no longer live as someone cornered. He walks differently, looks different, breathes differently. He didn't change the city, he changed the lens. And suddenly someone holds the door, someone smiles, a driver yields. A stranger gives information without harshness. The same street, another world. Do you think this is a coincidence? It's life responding to the state. You don't realize that when you expect hostility, you walk with a guarded body, and the world reads you even before you speak. Change the internal reading, and the external reading changes. Symbolic reading is also noticing your own internal repetitions. If you always start and abandon, the symbol is clear. You still identify as someone who doesn't finish. If you always get lost when things start to go well, the symbol is clear. You have an internal ceiling, a silent loyalty to the old version that couldn't or didn't deserve. Life isn't punishing you, it's showing you where you still keep yourself small. And when you read it this way, you stop being offended by the reflection and start using the reflection as a map. And don't say you don't know how to read symbols. You do. When the same lesson returns in different clothes, you are facing a symbol. Does money disappear every month? Perhaps the symbol isn't the system, but the identity that buys immediate relief to escape discomfort. Do you always attract the same type of person? Perhaps the symbol isn't bad luck, but the silent assumption that you need to accept crumbs to avoid being alone. The symbol shows where you still negotiate with yourself. Some people live as slaves to external signs. If X happens, then I'll believe. This is voluntary delay. The symbol doesn't come to command you, it comes to reveal you. A delay can reveal impatience. A no can reveal dependence on approval. A silence can reveal fear of emptiness. A conflict can reveal the habit of seeking enemies to avoid facing choices. Read, and upon reading, choose again. The symbol is the teacher of your identity. The fourth essential principle is the most feared because it requires courage to live as if it already is. It's not pretense, it's residence. You don't imagine for a few minutes and then go back to living in the mental basement. You change homes internally, and living in a state means thinking from it, not about it. One who lives from prosperity asks, what expands? One who lives from scarcity asks, what if there isn't enough? One who lives from value asks, what do I choose? One who lives from lack asks, what can I convince someone of? The question reveals the state. Living as if is made up of micro-actions, not theatrical performances. It's the way you enter a place. It's the type of conversation you tolerate. It's the pattern of choices you repeat when no one is supervising. Do you want to change your financial reality? Start by changing the respect you have for your own time. Wasted time is a signature. Do you want to change your emotional reality? Start by changing the way you abandon yourself to keep someone. Do you want to change your professional reality? Start by changing the way you present yourself to your own work, not to impress, but to honor the identity you've chosen. How you do the small is how you will do the big. You can start small, but start real. When you assume the desired state, you don't wait for external permission to act with internal dignity. You adjust posture, rhythm, attention. You learn to say no to what contradicts the identity you've chosen, even if it still seems convenient to accept. You stop explaining yourself to the world. You stop apologizing for wanting more. And you treat imagination as serious rehearsal. You visualize not to escape, but to train. You repeat internally until it becomes natural internally. And when it becomes natural internally, the world rushes to confirm. And don't confuse this with recklessness. Living as if is not ignoring bills, commitments, or facts. It's dealing with facts without becoming their slave. It's paying what needs to be paid without defining yourself by lack. It's taking care of what needs to be taken care of without defining yourself by labels. It's talking to someone difficult without defining yourself by the conflict. You honor the present, but you don't idolize it. You manage what exists and sustain what you have chosen. One who knows how to inhabit a state doesn't despair over time. They use time as a bridge. The fifth essential principle is identity sustained in silence. The modern world addicts you to announcement. You want to tell, post, explain, ask for opinions, seek applause, and by doing this, you surrender your state to an unstable, anxious, and sarcastic collective mind. True change is born in silence, because silence is where assumption takes root. You don't need anyone to believe. You need to believe. And to believe here isn't hope, it's occupation. You occupy the state as one occupies a place that is theirs, even if the furniture is still being brought in. Silence doesn't mean passivity. It means discipline of energy. You stop spending your energy arguing with shadows. You stop being contaminated by the anxiety of others. You reduce noise, because noise is the gateway to the old state. And you go on a mental diet. Yes, a diet. Just as the body becomes what you consume, the mind becomes what you allow in. You don't need to watch the whole world. You need to watch your entrance. What internal conversation do you feed? What images do you repeat? What judgments do you chew on? What you call realism is often just loyalty to the old. Here is a golden rule. Don't announce the seed, protect the root. There are states that die when you expose them too early to others' gaze. Therefore, be discreet. First, change your internal habit. Then let the results speak. Silence keeps the energy concentrated, and concentrated energy is what bends old patterns. When the urge to explain arises, use that urge as a sign that you are seeking validation. Go back inside and sustain. Before going to sleep, review the day and rewrite in imagination the version that corresponds to your new state. You don't do this to deceive yourself. You do this to educate your mind and make it obedient to what you've chosen. Upon waking, don't consult the world to know who you are. Decide who you are and enter the day from that. If you want a simple method within this principle, choose a password phrase for weeks. I am the person for whom this is natural, and treat it as an access password. Whenever the old narrative knocks on the door, you don't open the door to argue. You type the password and change rooms internally. Now I'll tie it all together, because I don't want this to become theory on your shelf. If reality is a delayed mirror, then what you do today is choose tomorrow's reflection. If emotional coherence is the real command, then your job is to stabilize the feeling of reality, not beg for signs. If life speaks in symbols, then you stop being offended by the reflection and start to adjust the lens. If living as if is residence, then you stop visiting the desired state on weekends and move back into it. If silence is the root, then you stop exposing the seed and start protecting the process. And don't wait to feel 100% before sustaining. No one climbs a ladder expecting the rung to appear first. You step, and the rung reveals itself. Your part is to step with internal decision. If one day you falter, don't dramatize, don't turn a slip into an identity. Correct and return. The consistency that changes realities isn't perfection, it's a quick return to the chosen state. Returning quickly is maturity. Returning quickly is power. Do you want the missing link to change reality? Here it is. Change doesn't happen when the world gives you permission. Change happens when you become unavailable to the old version of yourself. You cut off the supply, you end the contract. You stop repeating the story. You stop asking and start commanding. To command isn't to shout, it's to decide calmly and act with consistency. There's a difference between wanting and being. Reality doesn't respond to your wanting, it responds to your being. And your being is built by the discipline of what you accept as normal within you. So I end with a firm exhortation. From now on, stop begging for external changes. Stop negotiating with circumstances as if they were superior. Circumstances are waves. You are the ocean. Assume in silence and certainty the state you choose to inhabit, and treat everything contrary as fleeting foam. When your mind asks for proof, give it presence. When fear offers stories, offer it discipline. When the world takes time to catch up, don't revert to the old persona to protect yourself. Remain, sustain, stay whole. You don't need to fight the world to be obeyed. You need to stop arguing with your own choice. Reality bends to the state you inhabit naturally, like water finding the easiest path. Make your new state the easiest path within you. Repeat, sustain, simplify, and let the exterior, which has always been delayed, catch up with the interior, which has always been the origin. And if you want a practical step to consolidate this new state and make it a daily habit, go back to the pinned comment link. Use the material as training for focus, imagination, and coherence to transform this discourse into practice, practice into identity, and identity into reality. Do this seriously, not to try, but to decide, and then observe with calm and authority. Reality will inevitably obey the state you have assumed within yourself. Not because the external world decided to be favorable, but because the external world is merely the servant of what you have decreed within yourselves. Understand, it is not a technique of magic words, but of an assumed state. The minute serves only as a hammer that drives the nail of conviction into the mind until it has no escape. Therefore, make no mistake, this minute is not ordinary. It is the remembrance of who you truly are. It is the instant when the Creator awakens within man and decides, once and for all, that the world must obey what has already been accepted as real in the heart. It is the restoration of your forgotten inheritance, the authority to assume and to command that it be so. You have been taught to believe that imagination is merely fantasy, a baseless reverie, a play of the mind. But I tell you, imagination is the very substance of reality. Nothing you touch, see, or experience today would exist if it had not first been conceived in the invisible. Look around. Every building, every object, every invention, even your clothed body, all began as an idea, an image held within someone's mind. The visible is always the delayed consequence of the invisible. Therefore, I state with authority, imagination is not unreal. It is the matrix of all that manifests. Scripture does not speak in vain when it says that Abraham gazed upon the stars and in them saw the progeny that did not yet exist. He did not see with carnal eyes, but with the gaze of faith, which is the inner vision. And that vision did not fail, because the invisible, when accepted with conviction, is so real that the external world has no choice but to obey. You think that faith is to wait resignedly, but no. Faith is to assume as fact what is not yet seen, knowing that the invisible is more real than appearance. Imagination is the womb of creation, and whoever despises it condemns themselves to live only by what others conceive and sustain. Observe your own lives. How many times have you imagined the worst fed fear, mentally repeated scenes of failure and pain? And what happened? The world, obedient, presented you with exactly what you assumed. It was not bad luck, it was not cruel fate, but the immutable law that responds to the state you sustain. So too does it happen when, in silence, you dare to imagine the best, to see yourselves already living what you desire. The same power that brought misfortunes created by your negligence is the power that can bring blessings created by your discipline. The law does not choose, it merely reflects. Understand this well, there is no difference between imagining and living. The difference lies only in the time of maturation, like between the seed and the fruit. When you imagine intensely, you are already living in the invisible. It is as if you entered a room before the door was opened to your eyes. The physical world is merely the door that sooner or later opens to reveal what you already inhabited in secret. Therefore I tell you, do not wait for external signs to believe. You must believe first, because the sign is always consequence and never cause. Discipline here is essential. Many imagine for a few seconds, but soon contradict themselves with doubts and fears. It is like planting a seed and pulling it up every day to see if it is germinating. Thus, nothing grows. But the one who sustains, the one who guards the vision as one guards a treasure, will see the fruit, even if everyone around mocks and says it is impossible. For it is not the world that decides, it is the state you choose to inhabit. Therefore understand, imagination is reality in its purest form. It is not illusion, it is not escape, it is not a game of the mind. It is the creative power acting within you, waiting only for you to use it consciously. The impossible is merely that which you have not yet dared to imagine with faith. But when you sustain the vision, when you live within what you desire without, the world, like an obedient servant, bows and brings what has already been accepted. You do not need to ask, you do not need to implore, you merely need to assume. Imagination is the place where the miracle has already happened, and to live in it is to decree to the world it is so. You need to understand that the law does not respond to desire itself, but to the state you inhabit. To desire something is to recognize that you do not possess it, and while you live in that recognition, you perpetuate absence. It is like the beggar who looks at wealth and implores. His desire is sincere, but the state he sustains is one of lack. And the law, which neither judges nor questions, merely reflects, returns to him more of what he is inwardly. The universe does not respond to the distressed plea, but to the silent position you assume within. Imagine someone who says, "I want health," but at the same time contemplates themselves as sick, mentally reinforcing all the symptoms, all the signs of weakness. What is being sustained? Not health, but sickness. So too with the one who cries out for prosperity, but lives in a state of fear, scarcity, of anxious vigilance over every penny. He thinks he is desiring wealth, but his state is one of poverty, and that is what the law mirrors. You do not attract what you want, you attract what you are. It is necessary then to change direction. Instead of remaining in desire, assume the state of fulfillment. Say to yourselves, "It is already mine. I already live this." Inhabit this state naturally, like someone who puts on clothes and then walks around without thinking whether they fit or not. The state is your invisible garment, and the world recognizes you by it. If you wear lack, you will be treated as lacking. If you wear abundance, everything around will conspire to confirm that abundance. Scripture speaks of this when it commands, "When you pray, believe that you have already received and it will be yours." Observe carefully. It is not, "Ask to receive one day." It is, "Believe that you have already received." This is assuming the state. You must enter the mental scene where the desire is already realized and remain there until the outer mind can no longer doubt. It is like inhabiting a new home. At first, everything is new, but later, naturally, it becomes your home. Thus it happens with the assumed state. By inhabiting it so much, you recognize it as your truth, and then the world bows. Many fail because they confuse intensity of desire with power of manifestation. They want so much that they despair, and that despair keeps them trapped in the wrong state. Strength is not in wanting, but in assuming. It is not much asking that convinces the law, but the simple, serene, and firm acceptance that it already is. It is a silent act, yet charged with authority. Therefore, abandon the habit of begging and begin to live as heirs. It is not arrogance, but recognition of your true position. You are not servants of circumstance, you are masters of the state you inhabit. Desire is merely the call to change your state. Heed the call, assume the new, and then you will discover that nothing can be denied to you, because the world does nothing more than confirm what you have already accepted to be. When you observe an external sign, you tend to treat it as a cause, but I tell you, the visible world is merely a symbol, a reflection, a shadow of what is already established within. Nothing that appears before your eyes has power of its own. Everything is a consequence of a silently assumed state. Whoever reads events as final decrees is mistaken, because they are merely delayed witnesses of something that began in the invisible. It is like a seed that has been cast into the earth. When it sprouts, no one doubts that it emerged only because it was first hidden, invisible, germinating. The fruit does not appear from nothing. It is a symbol of the root. Likewise, when situations arise, whether good or bad, they are not the origin of your life, but the evidence of the state you yourselves have planted. You can pluck the fruit, but if the root remains, it will grow again. Therefore, changing external appearances without changing the inner state is fighting against shadows, useless and exhausting. How many of you see an obstacle and say, "It is decided, there is no way out"? But you do not realize that the obstacle is merely a symbol of your disbelief. It has no substance of its own. It is not a real enemy, merely the reflection of your state. When you change within, the symbol inevitably changes without. What seemed like a wall dissolves like smoke, because it was never the cause, only a projection. Scriptures speak in parables to teach you this principle. Joseph was cast into prison, but the symbol of the prison was not an end, merely a temporary reflection. The state of greatness he had already assumed elevated him to rule Egypt. The symbol transformed because the root within him never ceased to be abundance and authority. Had he read the prison as a final decree, he would have been lost. But he understood. Signs are not destinies, they are echoes. You need to learn to interpret life not as a sentence, but as a language. Each external fact is a word written by your own inner being. If you read sickness, know this: it is a reflection of a sustained state of weakness or fear. If you read prosperity, it is a reflection of an assumed state of abundance. And when you change the inner writing, you inevitably change the text that the world presents to you. Therefore, stop fixating on signs as if they were masters of your existence. They are not commandments, they are messages. External reality is merely the screen upon which internal images are projected. You do not need to fight against the images, you need to change the projector. And the projector is your state of consciousness. So, when the symbol rises against you, do not fear. Look at it as you would look into a mirror. Do not argue with the reflection. Change the expression on your face. When you change within, the symbol inevitably bows. This is the law. The visible world has no choice but to obey the invisible that sustains it. Few understand the value of discipline, but I tell you, without it, no state can be sustained until manifestation. You live in a world that trains you for dispersion, for constant changes of focus, for oscillation between faith and doubt. But the law does not yield to instability. It responds to the one who holds the vision firm, even when everything around screams the opposite. That is why I affirm, 1 minute of absolute certainty is more powerful than entire days of vacillation. Imagine someone who decides to inhabit the state of health. On the first day, they visualize themselves strong and healed. On the second, they return to observing symptoms and yield to fear. On the third, they force their imagination again, but soon fall into lament. This is not discipline, it is instability. And just as a seed pulled up every day does not blossom, so too the state never materializes. Discipline is to remain, even if the senses say the opposite. It is to water the same vision until it imposes itself as reality. The rebellious mind will say, "But nothing has changed. I am still surrounded by the same difficulties." It is at this point that discipline proves itself. It is not difficult to believe when everything seems favorable. The challenge lies in sustaining the vision when appearances seem to mock you. The one who endures this contrast without yielding, who insists on silent conviction, will see the impossible yield before them. For it is not time that governs, it is persistence in the state. Remember, there is no greater effort than that of constancy. I am not speaking of physical effort, but of the inner decision not to betray the vision you have chosen. It is easy to oscillate. It is rare to maintain oneself. But the law does not reward the wavering. It obeys the constant. When you repeat, when you return to the state, when you refuse doubt even in the face of contrary signs, you are driving invisible roots that no wind can uproot. Discipline is the invisible thread that unites the invisible to the visible. Without it, you live in flashes. Today you believe, tomorrow you doubt. Today you plant, tomorrow you uproot. But with it, the vision becomes so solid within you that the external world has no choice but to bow. It is like the potter who molds clay. It is not enough to touch it once and let go. He holds his hands firm until the desired shape is established. Therefore understand, discipline is not empty rigidity. It is faithfulness to what you have already chosen to be. It is the courage not to abandon the state, even when the senses cry out otherwise. It is the act of returning 100 times to the same decree until it becomes natural. The undisciplined gets lost in appearances. The disciplined creates new appearances. Whoever masters discipline masters life itself. You believe that you need to cry out loudly, repeat requests to heaven, move multitudes with words for something to happen. But I tell you, true command is not in the noise of the voice, but in the silence of conviction. The universe does not bend before supplications, but before the inner vibration of one who has already decided. Silence sustained with certainty is more powerful than 1,000 cries without faith. When you quiet yourselves within and assume, it is already so, that decree does not need to be heard by anyone else. There are no angels rushing to record requests, no external forces negotiating conditions. What exists is the law responding immediately to your state. Silence is the altar where the command is issued, and that command is irrevocable when born of certainty. Imagine a king. He does not need to raise his voice to be obeyed. A mere look suffices, a mere gesture suffices. Simply being in a position of authority suffices. So too with you when you assume the position of creators. The wavering mind cries out, asks, implores, but the awakened spirit merely declares in silence, knowing that its inner word is already a confirmed decree. The obedience of the world is not in the sound, but in the position of the one who speaks. Observe how often you waste energy repeating words without feeling, as if much talk could replace faith. It is not so. The law is not moved by formulas, but by conviction. An instant of silence filled with certainty is worth more than hours of anxious prayers. When in your innermost being you say, "I am," and feel it as reality, the entire universe has already moved, even if your eyes do not yet perceive it. That is why I affirm, cultivate silence. It is not the silence of apathy, but that of authority. It is the one who says, "It is done," and rests because they know the command has already been given. It is in this silence that the mind bows, that doubt is crushed, that the impossible begins to dissolve. You do not need to announce to the world what you have decided to be. You merely need to sustain the state with firmness. The rest is an inevitable consequence. Therefore, abandon the cries of beggars and assume the silent voice of heirs. Your command does not need witnesses because the only true witness is the reality that bows. When you silently sustain the state already fulfilled, you are decreeing destiny. And destiny, like an obedient servant, has no choice but to serve you. Now understand with full clarity. Nothing is lacking to you. Nothing is out of reach. Nothing is impossible. What has not yet manifested before your eyes is not absence. It is merely a reflection of your failure to assume. Life denies you nothing. It is you who have not yet dared to take possession of what is already available in the invisible. It is like someone who has the keys to a house and remains outside, asking to enter, when all that would be needed is to turn the lock. You walk like beggars who supplicate the world for small crumbs of change, without realizing that the banquet is already laid out and that your inheritance is infinite. There is no need to wait for a sign to believe. There is no need to fight against appearances. The only true battle is to rise inwardly and assume the state you desire. The rest is not battle, but an inevitable consequence. Therefore assume today, at this very instant, the posture of one who already possesses. Do not leave for tomorrow what can be decreed now. Repeat with conviction until the mind bows, until the heart surrenders, and until the body recognizes the new order. Say 100 times in silence, "It is already so." 100 times not as a supplication, but as a hammer that deeply drives the stake of certainty within you. And remain in that decree as one who does not abandon their throne, no matter the cost. For you are not beggars at the door of life. You are heirs of the all, and the inheritance has always been yours. Observe carefully. There is no power outside of you. The external world is merely shadow, projection, reflection. There is no enemy out there that can stop you, because no symbol has authority over the root. Power has always been within, waiting to be recognized. What you assume in silence, the universe obeys without question. It does not matter if the senses still cry out the opposite, because the senses are merely delayed echoes. When the root is transformed, the fruit must change. And if you sustain the state, even in the face of contrary appearances, you will see that external reality, like an obedient servant, bows before your decree. Rise then from unconsciousness. No longer live as slaves of circumstance. Abandon the posture of those who implore and assume that of those who command. The universe is not a judge who weighs merits or demerits. It is your faithful servant, incapable of resisting the authority of the assumed state. You are the ones who decide. You are the ones who decree. You are the ones who choose the inner scene. And once chosen and sustained, the scene becomes inevitable destiny. Therefore, do not hesitate. Decide now. Sustain what you have chosen, and observe with serenity, because the impossible will not resist. It will dissolve like mist before the sun of your conviction. Nothing is denied to you, because everything has already been given to you. Life is not to come, it already is. Power does not need to be conquered, it already dwells within you. The future does not need to be feared, it is already molded by your imagination. All that remains is to accept, assume, and remain. The entire universe will bend to your decree. Remember, everything already is, and everything already belongs to you. The true forgotten method for becoming rich is not in repeating phrases, visualizing mansions, or sticking fake checks on the wall. It lies in something modern man has lost, the art of living in the invisible. Current man has become so captive to the senses that he believes only in what he can touch, measure, and display. He calls reality that which is merely the echo of his own inner state. He lives hypnotized by appearances, like a sleepwalker who confuses the dream with the mirror. He thinks money comes from work, luck comes from outside. Success depends on contacts and circumstances. But all of this is merely effect, and effect never creates the cause. What time erased was not a technique, but an understanding. The visible world is the answer, not the command. Man of old knew this. When he wanted to harvest, he first saw himself harvesting. When he desired to heal, he first saw himself healed. It wasn't superstition, it was inner science. He understood that the universe is mental, and that all matter is merely coagulated consciousness. Gold, bread, shelter, everything is born from the same invisible substance, living imagination. But modern man, dominated by haste and noise, replaced creative silence with the anxiety of doing. He believes that the more he struggles, the more he conquers, and thus he multiplies effort and scarcity simultaneously. He tries to wake up inside his own dream, without realizing that it is the dreamer who commands. Reality is a delayed consequence. When something appears in the physical world, it is already old. The event you see is merely the result of a state maintained for some time. Therefore, fighting against reality is fighting against the past. All true change is born from the invisible, from what has not yet been seen, but has already been assumed. The Creator does not react, he anticipates. He doesn't ask when, he affirms it already is. But see, this forgotten method demands rare courage, the courage not to depend on the senses, not to need proof, to walk in the dark, knowing that the ground will appear with each step. That is why almost no one practices it. Man wants guarantees, and the universe gives no guarantees, only mirrors. He who seeks signs before believing is declaring his doubt, and the mirror obeys. He who knows before seeing creates. The secret lies in living inwardly what the world does not yet recognize, not to impress but to command. The truly rich person is invisible before being visible. He behaves as one who already possesses, not out of pride, but out of awareness. When he speaks, his words carry weight because they are born from a complete, not a needy state. He doesn't chase wealth, he attracts it through the harmony of his being. The forgotten method is, therefore, a return to the origin. It is to stop looking outward and to listen again to the silent space from which everything is born. There is nothing mystical about this. It is pure obedience to the law of the mind. The invisible always precedes the visible, and he who establishes himself in the invisible no longer needs to beg for the visible. It is at this point that man becomes master of reality, when he understands that it is neither his enemy nor his destiny, but merely the reflection of what he has already decided to be. From this understanding, everything else, techniques, visualizations, repetitions, becomes unnecessary. They are crutches for those who still doubt. But the awakened man no longer needs to repeat that he is rich. He is. And the world, unable to resist silent conviction, bends before his state as the ocean bows to the wind. Surrender to certainty is the first and most difficult step, because it requires man to abandon belief and enter into knowing. Belief still contains the germ of doubt. It is an attempt to convince oneself of something that does not yet feel true. Knowing, on the other hand, is an absolute stillness. It needs no proof, seeks no guarantees, asks for no signs. It is the state of the conscious creator, one who has already decided and rests in their decision. When man truly knows, he no longer needs to struggle with the world. He knows that the world is merely the reflection of his own conviction, and therefore, everything he sustains within himself will inevitably become visible. Surrender to certainty is the door through which imagination begins to command reality. Modern man fears this surrender because it strips him bare. He prefers to believe he controls life with effort, planning, goals, and strategies. But all of this is disguised resistance. When you surrender to certainty, you abandon the attempt to control the means and begin to master the end. You no longer try to imagine how you will get rich. You know you are already rich and allow the invisible to take care of the details. The man who still doubts wants to convince himself. The man who knows merely watches the inevitable happen. It is like a seed resting in the dark. It doesn't need to watch the soil. It simply trusts the law that created it. It is this state that differentiates the creator from the beggar. The beggar implores for signs, prays for something to change, and lives in constant tension, because his plea is the confession of absence. The creator, by contrast, asks for nothing. He assumes he feels, and because of this he manifests. Certainty is silent, and silence is the ground where the invisible flourishes. When you declare "I am," without hesitation, without looking at the circumstances, you are not pretending. You are commanding. And the world, being merely a mirror, obeys. Surrender to certainty as one who releases an old burden. It doesn't require blind faith, but a profound clarity. Knowing is not imagining. It is perceiving that the imagined already exists on a plane prior to time. It is understanding that wealth is not something that will come, but something you already are in essence. When this perception settles in, the struggle ceases, fear dissolves, and what was effort becomes flow. Money, opportunities, and ideas begin to emerge naturally, as reflections of a state that no longer needs to be affirmed. When man surrenders to certainty, he stops being a beggar of destiny and becomes destiny itself. He understands that there is nothing to achieve, only something to remember, that everything already is and always has been. At this point, the impossible becomes logical, and wealth ceases to be an achievement. It becomes the inevitable consequence of one who has finally remembered what they always were. Mental silence is the foundation upon which all creation rises. Modern man, a slave to haste and incessant thought, has lost the ability to hear the space between noises. He talks too much, thinks too much, plans too much, and creates little. Constant mental noise is the greatest obstacle to manifestation, because a noisy mind is like a turbulent sea. Nothing can reflect on its surface. Creative power is born not from spoken words, but from sustained silence. It is in this silence that consciousness becomes fertile, and the invisible begins to take shape. When you become silent within, the universe finally listens. The man who has learned silence is not one who represses thoughts, but one who observes them without involvement. He lets them pass like clouds, without fighting against any of them. True stillness is not the absence of external noise, but internal mastery. While the world rushes in desperation, trying to acquire things, the silent man is on another level of existence. He already possesses because he does not doubt. Silence is not emptiness. It is the field where all possibilities sleep, awaiting an order. And this order is not shouted. It is felt. When I told Neville, "You don't travel to Barbados, you are already there," I was talking about this state of active silence. The noisy man asks, the silent man declares. One cries out to the heavens, the other assumes inwardly. The request comes from lack, the assumption from completeness. And the universe responds to the vibration of completeness. When you hold a mental image and envelop it in peace, not anxiety, it crystallizes. Imagination doesn't need excitement, it needs stillness. An excited mind doesn't create, it only projects chaos. A tranquil mind manifests, because it has become identical to what it desires. The silent mind is the temple of the Creator. When you stop reacting to the world and begin to sustain what is invisible, you start living as one who inhabits two planes simultaneously, the visible, which is slow and dense, and the invisible, which is instantaneous and obedient. Silence is not passivity, it is sovereignty. It is the state of one who needs to prove nothing because they already know. The invisible rich person does not argue with the world, they command it through serenity. Learn then not to rush when the world screams. Wait in silence, knowing that the truth has already been decreed within you. Doubt makes noise, but certainty is silent. And it is this silence, sustained by conviction, that moves circumstances like pieces on an invisible chessboard. When you manage to remain still within, even amidst chaos, you will realize that the entire world adjusts to the rhythm of your silence. The inversion of cause and effect is the point where the common mind separates from the creative mind. Common man lives believing that external things shape his internal state, that he must first receive to then feel worthy, that he needs to see the result before believing. This is the great illusion that keeps the world imprisoned. Nothing happens from outside in. Everything is born from within and merely projects outward. Emotion precedes the event. The state precedes the form. As long as you react to circumstances, you will continue to be their slave. But the moment you realize you are the cause, the entire world becomes your servant. Most live like a distorted mirror, reflecting what the world shows. If there is scarcity, they feel poor. If there is rejection, they feel unworthy. And thus, without realizing it, they perpetuate the same pattern, because the feeling they sustain reinforces the experience they perceive. The Creator does the opposite. He decides what he wants to feel and maintains that state until the world bows before him. When man feels rich even before having proof, he changes the vibration of his existence, and everything that is out of harmony with this new state begins to dissolve. Opportunities arise, ideas appear, paths open. But none of this is luck. It is a response. The man who masters this inversion understands that the physical world is merely a slow translation of consciousness. He doesn't need to wait for the deposit to hit his account to feel gratitude, nor for success to arrive to feel worthy. He knows that feeling is the seed and time, the soil. The harvest is merely the natural consequence of the sustained state. Therefore, when I say act as if you already are, I'm not talking about pretense, but about identity. Pretending is effort. Being is natural. The pretender is trying to deceive the world. The Creator merely expresses what is already true within him. If you feel lack, the universe confirms lack. If you feel wholeness, the universe confirms wholeness. The difference between the poor and the rich is not in money, but in the state each inhabits. The poor person lives trying to correct the reflection. The rich person adjusts the mirror. It is a total inversion of logic, to stop living in response and start living by decree. The physical world is an obedient instrument, but most people never direct it. Feel now as one who has already arrived. Don't wait for the result to change the feeling. Change the feeling and the result will come. This is what the ancients called living in the end. The cause is within you, the effect in time. When man stops begging for proof and begins to emanate conviction, the world has no alternative. It responds. Because reality is a faithful servant, it merely manifests what you have decided to be. Indifference to time is the final proof that man has understood the law. Time is the most subtle trap, because it makes it seem as if there is a distance between desire and its fulfillment. Common man says, "One day I will have," and the universe obedient keeps that promise eternally postponed. The Creator, on the other hand, doesn't wait. He already is. He understands that time is merely a tool of perception, not a real barrier. Time does not separate man from his desire. It is the mind that does so. When you live as if what you desire is yet to come, you declare to the universe that you do not possess it. And the universe confirms this absence. The secret is to die to time, to abandon the not yet, the one day, the when it happens. All that is true exists now. Consciousness lives outside the calendar, and it is on this plane that creation is fulfilled. The man who becomes indifferent to time is not one who ignores the days, but one who ceases to be a slave to waiting. He doesn't measure progress, doesn't compare results, doesn't fret over how much is left. He simply inhabits the end, even when the beginning seems contradictory. He lives the future reality in the present with such naturalness that time is forced to adjust to his certainty. When Neville saw himself in Barbados, he wasn't convincing himself he would travel. He had abolished the idea of time. He was there in consciousness, and the physical world simply had to obey. The journey was not an external event. It was the reflection of an internal state lived with such intensity that time dissolved. This is the power of conscious now. Everything assumed as real in the present must inevitably appear in the world of forms. What you call manifestation is nothing more than the eternal present becoming visible. But this indifference is not carelessness, it is mastery. It is the rest of the Creator. The man who worries about how long it will take reveals that he still doubts. And doubt is an inverted prayer. When you say, "It hasn't happened yet," you are decreeing exactly that it hasn't happened yet. The true Creator never asks when, because he has already decreed it is. He lives as one who has arrived, speaks as one who possesses, rests as one who has fulfilled, and because of this, time bows to his conviction. Free yourself then from chronology and anxiety. Time is the servant, not the master. As long as you wait, the universe will wait with you, but the moment you act, think, and feel as one who already is, time will cease to be a line and will become a circle. Everything will unite in the now. It is at this point that the impossible happens. When man realizes that eternity is not in the future, but in the present moment, he dared to call real. The purity of intention is the final seal of conscious creation. It is what separates true manifestation from illusion. Many desire wealth, but few understand what they are truly asking for. They desire, in truth, to escape from fear, scarcity, comparison. And everything born of lack can only generate more lack. The universe does not respond to words, it responds to the vibration that sustains them. When desire comes from need, it declares scarcity. When it comes from expansion, it declares abundance. And that is why so many who chase wealth never sustain it, because they seek to fill a void and not to express a fullness. Pure intention is born from being, not from ego. It doesn't say, "I want to be rich to prove something," but "I want to express more life, more beauty, more meaning." It is the natural movement of one who overflows. Just as a tree flowers because it can no longer contain its own sap, the awakened man manifests because he is already full within himself. He creates not out of fear of losing, but out of joy of expanding. This is the difference between one who forces and one who flows. Force comes from the ego. Flow comes from the spirit. When intention is pure, creation is light. There is no anxiety, haste, or need for control. Everything happens with precision because there is no resistance. The man who seeks wealth through competition enters into war with his own mind, and the result is always exhaustion. But the man who creates out of love, purpose, and gratitude transforms everything he touches. Wealth born of purity is unshakable because it does not depend on circumstances. It is an extension of inner order. It is a consequence of the harmony between what is desired and what one is. Purity also demands sincerity. Ask yourself, why do I want what I want? If there is fear in the answer, the desire is still carnal. It is a desire to escape. But if there is peace, it is spiritual. It is a desire for expression. Divine consciousness does not create to supply, but to reveal. True prosperity does not come when you try to compensate for lack. It comes when you stop feeling in lack. Therefore, abandon the desire that shouts and embrace what whispers. The first is born from insecurity, the second from wisdom. When the mind aligns with the heart, desire becomes silent prayer, and the universe responds instantly. The man pure in intention does not seek wealth to feel great, but because he has understood that he already is great, and thus money, opportunities, and the right people become merely instruments of his natural expansion. At this point, the cycle closes. Certainty, silence, inversion, indifference, and purity converge. The Creator returns to the center and understands that there is nothing to conquer. There is only what to express. And what he expresses is the very essence of wealth, living and conscious, flowing effortlessly through one who has finally remembered that he already possesses everything. So the forgotten method is not a set of steps to follow, but a return to the original state of being, one in which nothing is lacking because nothing is separate. Modern man seeks wealth by accumulating, competing, planning, but true power lies in remembering. Remembering that everything that manifests outwardly is merely an echo of what already exists within. Gold, success, opportunities, all of this is merely the material form of a consciousness that has become certain of itself. He who lives trapped in reality tries to correct the reflection. The awakened one corrects the cause. And when the cause is adjusted, the world has no choice but to obey. You were not created to beg for circumstances, but to command them in silence. The external world is a canvas, and your consciousness is the paintbrush. While the common man tries to paint the picture with his hands, the Creator does it with his mind. He doesn't ask, he decrees. He doesn't wait, he inhabits. And that is why the invisible conspires in his favor. Reality is malleable before conviction and inflexible before doubt. To ignore reality is not to deny the world. It is to refuse to be governed by it. It is to act as one who already possesses, feel as one who has already arrived, rest as one who has already fulfilled. It is to perceive that time, circumstances, and probabilities are not obstacles, but instruments moldable by consciousness. And when this consciousness becomes firm, the universe silently organizes itself to confirm the decree. Stop chasing what is already yours. From now on, abandon the habit of reacting, asking, waiting. Return to the center and declare internally, I am. Let the world do the rest. People who understand this law live with a serenity that confuses others because they seem to do nothing, yet everything happens around them. This is the silent mastery of the Creator. May you from today stop begging and start commanding. May you abandon doubt and clothe yourself in certainty. May your silence speak louder than any prayer. Because the forgotten method was never lost. It was merely dormant within you. And when you awaken it, the impossible becomes common, and wealth ceases to be a goal to become your revealed nature.